I now call him Saint Entrepreneur. Saint Entrepreneur. Of all the saints you've probably heard of, that's probably not one of them. And I can understand that. By the way, my name is Stan Hustad, and I'm a longtime teacher, international broadcaster, business performance coach, and it has been my privilege and my pleasure to help entrepreneurs all around the world discover what they have to do, what it takes, design a plan and a strategy, and then to market and make moves to make it all happen. And what I'd like to do in this course is tell you about how I learned that one of the key ways to achieve personal and business success is to follow Saint Entrepreneur. Here's the story. I had been very successful. I had done well. I had been trained by the BBC, had a master's degree, had a long and some people said, rather important teaching career. I'd been in international broadcasting work. I had achieved a great deal. But then all of a sudden, in my mid-40s, I was shipwrecked. That's right, I was shipwrecked. And everything I had achieved and all the career success I had had fell apart. And I still remember that very painful day that my dear wife Karen, after we had had a rather somber dinner, as I had been looking around trying to find work, all of a sudden she stood up, took the napkin in her hand, threw it down and said, "This is exactly what I was hoping for when I married you 20 years ago. I was hoping that after 20 years of marriage, we would have no house, no car, no job, no money, broke, and a kid in college. That's what I was hoping for." And then her sarcasm turned into deep sobbing and tears, and she left the room. I still remember that. In fact, I remember it every day, as I am motivated to seek throughout the other shipwrecks of my life to achieve those things that are not important just for me, but most profoundly for the ones I love. What I'm going to do in this class is I'm going to try and teach you what I learned from Saint Entrepreneur about how you can go from your personal shipwreck, or you're perhaps stuck in the mud wreck, and design and discover a way to achieve success that will make you one of the 3% of the population who knows who they are, what they want, where they're going, and they have a picture and a plan to get them there. That's what this class is all about. I'm going to teach you the secrets of success from Saint Entrepreneur. Thank you so much. This is Stan Hustad once again, and you went through what I call the promotion invitation to the class on Saint Entrepreneur. The things you need to know to be successful as an entrepreneur from ancient times to right now times to going forward in the future. What do you need to know? What does it take in terms of discovery and design and doing so that we can make our mark in the world? Now, this is the introduction, the invitation promotion. Now let's go into the introduction. First of all, very quickly and simply, I'm Stan. Stan Hustad's my name. For years, I have been a teacher, an international broadcaster, a business performance coach, a writer, speaker, helping people discover what it is they were made to do, create the plan, the possibilities, and the processes so they could build a life and a career and a business that works for them. Create their own personal economy, and I am now doing more and more of this fun work. Do what you love. Do what's fun. teach and greet and meet with people all over the world through online education. And so I'm bringing my many years of broadcast teaching and consulting and coaching experience right to you online. And thank you for joining me. One of the things that I discovered during that particular times of my life is just how I began the promotion invitation. Let me tell you a story. By the way, that's very, very vital. Now we're saying saint entrepreneur, but Richard Branson is no saint. At least I don't think so. He certainly would not claim that. But recently, Richard Branson, one of the world-class entrepreneurs, simply made this statement: if you cannot tell stories, if you are not a storyteller, you will never be successful as an entrepreneur. Now, as I used to say on the radio, you want to hear that again? If you cannot tell stories, if you are not a storyteller, you will never be successful as an entrepreneur. Now let that kind of sit on your head, and then perhaps it'll sink down and pervade, and you'll have to deal with that. That was my story, and it gets people's attention, gets people involved. And by the way, the power of a story is everybody can identify with some aspect of a story, and in doing so, they bring their own story to it. Sometimes we have what I call share the shipwreck. And that's where people of success talk about the time when they were shipwrecked, when it all came apart, and how did they survive the shipwreck. And some people had bigger shipwrecks than others, but the fact that we talked about having a rough time, going through difficult times, having almost lost or having lost everything, and then trying to get to shore and rebuild the ship and the ship shape of our lives. I went through some very difficult times. And here's what happened to me. And this is what I'm going to ask you to begin to do. When something doesn't work, just simply, prayerfully, thoughtfully say, what happened? What happened? Don't blame. Don't necessarily try to explain. Just simply notice and observe what happened. Why did this happen? Again, don't get in the blame game, either other people, yourself, but observe what happened. Well, here's what happened. At least to me, I realized that, since I'd been so successful in so many parts of my life, why did this thing go wrong? And I came to the conclusion that perhaps I needed to know more about success. I mean, I had done successful things, but I had never purposely set out to be successful and to achieve and sustain success. That was interesting to me. I just kind of, dealt with the day and dealt with it well and landed up in pretty good places, but I can't believe that I ever had a real strategic, thoughtful plan. So I needed to learn about success. So here's what happened. I started searching. I was a good student, finally. I hadn't been that great a student in college or university, but I was a student about there. Now this meant something. This was motivation and money and all those things I needed. I had a wife and 2 children, and I had to do some things well. Hey, let's move this thing along. And so I studied. I read hundreds, maybe thousands of books. I listened to all the audio programs that you could ever, you name it. There's probably not one that I'm not familiar with or haven't read or taught or explained. And all of them were very helpful and useful in some ways. But you know what? Finally, it struck me. One time when I was involved in reading the Christian scriptures, I came across what I have now called the leadership memo. And all of a sudden, the 4 or 5 things that were important about success just hit me. It was the true epiphany. It was the aha moment. And I said, that's it. Now that's why this course is also a challenge course. We're going to enter into the realm of spiritual, emotional, and professional development. And that might be a little bit uncomfortable for you, because you may not really believe that is a significant part of life. You may not believe, as I believe, that we are not human beings who can have a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings who have a human experience. Now, that's the fundamental framework that I understood. That we not only were beings that were being things, we were also material beings who literally had spiritual roots, transcendent realities, and that's why this is a challenge course. Some of you will not be comfortable. Maybe you ought to leave the class. If you're smart, and I don't mean to be snotty about that, but hopefully you'll be open to at least listening and discovering. Remember, a thing I also learned, everything can be useful. Even snotty, nasty people can be useful. Even things I disagree with can be useful. So what I'm going to do in this short course, because you're busy, I'm going to share with you what I learned in this management leadership memo from St. Paul. That's right. They named a town after him in Minnesota. They named a big city, Sao Paulo, after him in Brazil. St. Paul, in his theology, in his missionary speaking and traveling, he was also a businessman. In fact, that's how he made his living. He was a businessman, an entrepreneur, and in his leadership work, he put down clearly and powerfully the principles of true success. And in this challenge course, I'm going to share what I learned from St. Paul about not only being an entrepreneur, but about what it then finally helped me to understand and say, yeah, that's it. Those are the things, the vital things you need to know about success. And after that, as one of my mentors would say, everything else is merely detail. The depths, the dynamics, the deep-rooted things that are important, they're all there. And everything else is detail. So I hope you'll hang on. In the next few presentations, I'm going to go through the 4, maybe 5, but primarily 4 things you need to know and do to be successful in a difficult and shipwrecked world, how you can still achieve true success, create those things that will make for the life worth living. So I hope you'll join me. It'll be a challenge. It'll be things that'll stretch you. I guarantee you it'll probably change your mind and in some ways maybe your world. Well, what did I learn from St. Paul? Here I had done all of this work. And this, by the way, is kind of a souvenir. This is actually an old Bible that was given to my father when he was a young man, and it was passed on to me. And in the Christian scriptures, you will find that St. Paul had a wonderful way of communicating leadership. He didn't write a book. As far as we know, he didn't give many great speeches. In fact, the indications are that he wasn't really very good at speaking or public speaking. Some people thought he was maybe kind of boring. And his personal presence supposedly wasn't all that much. But there was some power in his person that was amazing. And what he did is he wrote letters. That's something to know. I remember one great entrepreneur once said to me, a very successful man, he said simply this: short notes lead to large results. And he said that the secret of his success was on his desk he had a stack of little note cards and little envelopes, and he had a nice pen, and what he would do is every day he would write little notes to family, to friends, to colleagues, to clients, to employees, just continually sending little notes to people. Personal handwritten notes. Really powerful. Well, what St. Paul did is, toward the end of his career, he wrote a letter to a group of people, an organization, a small church that he had established in the city of Philippi. And so it's called simply the letter to the folks at Philippi. That's what it was. And it's a short letter. However, it was rich in meaning, and as I was reading it, all of a sudden, it came to me. And this is what I learned. In chapter 1, St. Paul begins with one of his usual greetings, and here's what he says. I give thanks upon every remembrance of you. I'm thankful for you. I give thanks every time I think of you. What a wonderful thing to say to somebody. You know what? I'm so grateful that you came into my life. And what happened in the midst of my misery and the shipwreck of my life, and it was difficult, I learned a fundamental principle which I have a hard time applying, but here it is. A thankful and grateful heart is seldom a fearful heart. Like on the radio, may I say it again, a thankful and grateful heart is seldom a fearful heart. One of the best ways to deal with your fear, be thankful, be grateful. You can't have a negative emotion and a positive emotion in one emotional space. One drives out the other. And what I have learned and what I have very imperfectly practiced is this. No matter what, say thank you. Say thank you. Be grateful. As one of my mentors, a woman of great wisdom, said, Stan, be thankful for the bad times. Be thankful for the tough times. Even be thankful when the shipwreck occurs and you didn't go down with the ship. At least be thankful for that. In all things, give thanks. Be thankful for the people who do bad things. Now, is this a natural thing? This is truly the mark of a person who is striving to be above and beyond the rest of the folks. Most of us don't give thanks for the things we have that we are grateful for, that we really are glad about. Lesson number 1 I learned, in all things, seek to have a thankful attitude. It's attractive. It's winsome. People wonder. Remember, one of the best things that you can do as an entrepreneur is to keep people a little off balance with the force and the power of your personality. Always create a little mystery. And when you have a person who is able always to say thank you, just one of my favorite words is grateful. Hey, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for your help. Powerful word. Start using it. Just, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I'm thankful. Thank you. Start using that all the time in your conversations and see if that word will go from your head to your heart to your very body and being. A thankful and grateful spirit. That's right in chapter 1 of the letter. And that's what I discovered, that if I was going to be successful as an entrepreneur, particularly as an entrepreneur, I had to learn, because there were going to be a whole lot of difficulties. As I oftentimes tell people, adversity is part of the plan, so plan on it. You will have difficult times. And along with that, I can be thankful that everything that happens to me, even the bad things, can be useful to me. They can be helpful to me. And so with that perspective in my heart and mind, I can be thankful, even for the difficult times. So there you go. Lesson 1 in how to be saint entrepreneur and a follower of real wisdom. Always seek to be thankful. Okay, Lesson number 2 coming up. If you read that letter of St. Paul's, you'll find out that in chapter 2, he talks about the person of Jesus. And he has a very interesting expression. In effect, he said that he came to serve. He came to serve. Now, that was a very, very unusual expression. The people who served were slaves. They weren't serving. Leaders didn't serve. Big and smart and clever and powerful people, they didn't serve. They were the ones who were served. And so that somebody who had power and influence and authority would actually view themselves in a service role was totally countercultural. Counter everything. And you know what? It still is. I can usually recognize the person who's going to give me trouble is they are the person who think I exist to serve them. And the person who's going to have that authentic spirit is when I sense within them that they are in the business of serving others. One of the stories I tell is when I was saying that, somebody spoke up and said, "Hey, I've got a lot of things to do. I'm here to serve myself for a while. I got to take care of myself and my family." And I hopefully was not too smart aleck. I just simply said, "Well, I hope you serve yourself." "Yeah? Really? Well, then I hope you pay well and on time because you're the only client or customer you'll ever get." Years ago, Bob Dylan sang an old raspy song and said, "You gotta serve somebody." Albert Einstein said, "We are here for others." And he said, "That's not relative." That's my own addition. We're here for others. You have to have a servant spirit. You have to love the idea that your product, your service, does not just make you money, but it actually serves people. It goes well for them. Things are better for them. And so, there you are. I learned I have to serve. Now here was the key question, and this is the key question for you. Okay, who? In my life and in my business, who specifically are the people I'm called to serve? Who's my customer? Who's my client? I still, time and time in my consulting and coaching and teaching, I say, well, who's your client? Who's your customer? Who's in your audience? Who are you trying to help? And they don't know. They're so focused on their product and their process and their service, they have never decided and figured out who is it they're trying to serve. Who is the best person that can use and appreciate my services and my products and buy them again and recommend them to others? So it's not only that I know that I'm called to serve, but I know who I'm called to serve and then how I can best serve them. And I'm always seeking ways, as one person said, with the tennis metaphor, to improve my serve. So the second question I was confronted with is just that. Am I serving others? Who are they? And how can I best serve them? And when I figured that out, it began to help me not only to figure out my life, but how I should run my business. So, who are you called to serve? Well, here we go with lesson number 3. And this is rather interesting because one of my favorite numbers is 3. And in fact, I collect 3s. I collect the number 3. Here's why. While I was going through this seeking to discover how to be successful, I learned from a very wise teacher what has been called the principle of the 3%. Now, may I just share that with you? What this person said to me is that through research, they had found that basically people fall into 4 categories. 3% of the population know who they are, what they want, and have a plan to get it. Only 3%. They have the focus, the drive, the determination. They know who they are. They know what they want. They know who they're called. All those things I've talked about. They know that. Only 3%. 10% have some idea, not nearly as clear and concise and not as clear as it would be best to be, but they know something about that. Then 60%, the vast majority of people, simply have hopes, wants, and wishes. No plans, no goals, just someday I'd like to do this. That would be nice. And 27% really are kind of clueless. They just kind of deal with the day as best they can. No hopes, no dreams, no plans, no goals, just live for the day. And only the day. 3%, 10%, 60%, 27%, and so I like the number 3 because I'd like to be one of those 3%. I'd like to know who I am and what I'm called to be and who I'm called to serve and what are some of the things that I'd like to achieve in life. I'd like to be one of those 3%. And it actually is in chapter 3 that St. Paul really puts it to me. He's talking about things and then he has this wonderful line which is vital because I had really been double-crossed. He says, forget what is behind. Forget it. Forgive it. Good things, bad things, forget what is behind. I press toward the mark of the high calling. Wow. So not only do I have to be thankful, now I have to be forgiving. I have to be forgiving of all that crap that people have done to me. All those difficulties and those betrayals. Forget it. Forget the mistakes. Forget the sins, forget the screw-ups, forget the bad. Let me tell you this. Abandon all hope of having a better past. You got that? Abandon all hope of having a better past. It's truly past. Forget it. But also, forget about all that achievement stuff too. It's in the past. As I oftentimes say, your resume talks about what you did in the past. The past is past. What can you do now and what can you do in the future? Forget about the past. Then press toward the mark. The mark. Now the mark means 3 things. All of a sudden it came to me. First of all, a mark is the word for a goal. And there goes back to my 3%. Most people have never decided what mark they want to make. They have no goals. They have no goals. They don't know what they want. So, what's your goal? Press toward, push toward your goal, the mark. Then, I thought, mark as in trademark. Now, your trademark is that thing that makes you unique and distinct and different. That's vital to success. We talk about trademark, that's who you are, that's your brand, that's the thing that makes you unique and powerful and different in the marketplace. So St. Paul is saying is, press towards your trademark. Find your unique, distinct, and powerful way of serving people. Have and live and show a trademark. And then, mark means you made the mark. You left your mark. You actually left a difference. One of my friends said, unfortunately, most people live their lives in such a way they only leave a blur while others make their mark. So how are things different? How are people different? Because you made your mark. Things changed. Things just didn't improve. People and places and products and processes, things are different because you were there. That's your mark. So indeed, and now going back to what it takes is fundamental. It's the number 3, the lesson that is vital to us all. Forget what is behind, the good and the past. Forget it. Then press toward the marks, those powerful marks that we are called to make, that will give us the energy and the power and enthusiasm for our goals. Give us the uniqueness and the things that make us distinct and different in the marketplace so we truly are one of a kind. And then we have a reputation. We have a reputation because we do things. We achieve things. We make things happen. We leave our mark. The world is a bit different. People are changed. Things happen that are unique and powerful. We are not those people who just simply show up and there's a bit of a blur and maybe a smile, maybe even not even that. We are people who truly make a difference. We make our mark. Now, that's what it means. As Saint Entrepreneur was trying to teach us, that is how we, as some people say, and they reminded me, is not only that's what it takes, but here's what happens. People like that don't live lives that are different by degree. Those kinds of people, those 3%, are the kind of people who live lives that are different in kind. Different in kind. So that's my challenge to me. I teach this, and you know who has to remind themselves and remember it every day? Maybe not you, but even me. What can I do today and every day that will help move me in the areas of relationships, my character, and my achievements? My relationships and my character and achievements that will help me be one of the 3% who truly make their mark. Yes, indeed. Number 3, be one of the 3%. Chapter 3. Forget what is behind and press toward the mark of the high calling. High calling. I didn't get into that, but this is just a little bit of an intermission. We're just going to take a few moments here, remind you of 2 things. First of all, I don't do long classes. I do real short classes, challenge courses as I call them. And this is a challenge. Some of you are mightily challenged by this. Some of you don't like this. Some of you don't agree. But you know what? That's fine. That means that you now have to figure out what you believe and what you do. If you don't like what you heard, then what's your response? What's your alternative? What would you believe is true? What do you think will influence you and help you achieve the best? So there we go. But I want you perhaps even to go back and listen again. Chapter 1. I give thanks. A thankful and grateful heart. Thank you. Number 2. Called to serve. Who am I called to serve? How am I supposed to do that? Number 3. Forget what is behind. Forget it. Good and bad. Hey! What goal? What marks am I called to make? What are my goals? Do I have any goals? Hey, what is my trademark? What makes me unique and distinct? about my business. I oftentimes say to people, what can you do that nobody else can do? My daughter once said to me, Dad, write the book that only you can write. Don't just write another book on marketing. Write the book that only you can write. As someone has said, if they put all of the things in about you, you'd come up number one on Google because you're the only one who does what you do. And then, how will things be different? How do you want to be remembered? How have you made your mark in the world, the marketplace, in your life, in your business? How do people remember you? One of my friends said that one of the best things you can do is sit down and ask yourself the question is, when they bury you and they're talking about you, what do you want them to say about you? Then put that in your plan. Do something every day that'll help you land up that way. Well, there we go. End of intermission. Just want you to think about some of those things because now we're going to go on to the final step 4. And that'll bring us to the 4, and maybe we'll go to the 5th. Maybe. Things that you can learn from Saint Entrepreneur.